Hi and welcome to the channel. Today I want to talk to you a little bit about filtering. This video is a result of the pre-work of my previous videos, where I learned a lot from the YouTube community and the research I have to go into to make all those videos for you guys. But I stumbled upon new information from me, at least, that I thought was really interesting and I wanted to share with you guys. So this video is basically about how to combine two filter modules to achieve up to 5 different filtering techniques. I think this video is a good match for those of you who have a Moog Grandmother, but the concepts you will learn here can be applied to any modular system in which you can combine a low pass filter with a high pass filter. And this video will be roughly divided into two parts. A first one when I talk a little bit about theory and the different filter types, as well as talk about harmonics. And on the second part, I will patch the Moog Grandmother to create these different filtering techniques. A small disclaimer: if you want to reproduce this in your Moog Grandmother, you will need one of those stackable cables. So without further ado, let's jump into it. But before we jumped into what is a filter and what are the different types of filters, we need to understand what is it that we are filtering or removing in our substractive synthesis. And most of you probably know that we are removing frequencies from the original sound, but what are those frequencies and how do they happen naturally in acoustic instruments? And of course, why is this important for sound design? And I mean, when we say we recreate strings or brass into our synthesizers, it is good to know how those instruments resonate so that you can reproduce this in your sound design if this is your objective. And the best instrument to talk about those frequencies or harmonics, or at least the way I learned in the first place, was to look into a guitar string. And that's because by observing the phenomena of a string vibrating, you can actually see physically what a harmonic is. So in essence, if I pluck a guitar string, that string will vibrate throughout the whole length of the guitar neck, or the length of the string. And this vibration frequency will give us the fundamental pitch of that string. However, that string is not only vibrating in its total length, but is at the same time vibrating in multiple integer divisions of its length. Meaning that you also have a vibration node at the very middle of the string, multiplying its frequency by 2. You also have vibration nodes when you divide the string length into 3 and 4 and 5 and so forth. An easy way to demonstrate this is by gently positioning my finger on the middle node of a string and plucking the string. And by doing so, what you hear is basically the half-length string harmonic, or its second harmonic. And this sound, it's the equivalent in the synthesis world to a sine wave. So you can hear it's a very pure and soft to the ear sound. Right? Here it's how it sounds like when I put my fingers in the 3rd division of the string, and I can also use a technique called pinch harmonic to reach out for the 4th division or even 5th. But okay, how can we apply this knowledge from the guitar strings analogy into the synthesizer? And if you look into this schematic drawing here, this represents the harmonic series of the note C distributed on a keyboard, and the height of the blue bars represents the volume of each harmonic. The precise difference in volume of all these overtones, it's what gives an instrument its unique timbre. Of course, if we would look into the spectrometer real measurements, you would see that there will be much more overtones other than just the harmonics, and that's due to other factors that is not only the sound generator, such as an acoustic resonance chamber and other resonators that you can find in an instrument. And in our case, in the synthesizer, it also has to do with which type of waveforms we choose into our oscillators or sound sources. An interesting fact here, specific for electronic instruments, is that different waveforms actually have different harmonics distribution that is not exactly the same as an acoustic analog instrument. So for instance, a sawtooth wave behaves very much like a guitar string, having a harmonic series for every integer division of its fundamental tone. However, a square wave only have harmonics in every other integer division, meaning that a square wave will actually have only harmonics in the odd integer divisions. And we can observe the same behavior in a triangular wave. So we can say that a sawtooth wave has richer harmonics than a square or triangle wave. Not to mention that a sine wave is purely the fundamental with no harmonics at all. And that's why many synthesizers in substractive synthesis don't offer a sine wave as an option for their oscillator waveforms. But okay, now that we know what is it that we are filtering out, it is time to go back to the main subject of this video, the filters. By the way, did you know that the filters that we are so precious about in synthesis were actually developed to better tune in to specific radio frequencies? It was just later that pioneers like Bob Moog got together with musicians and found an application for this technology into electronic music. Okay, stop diverging, focus. One concept that we have to clear out before we move forward, it's a recapitulation of my previous video here, and it is the concept of filter poles. So when we talk about poles, we are referring to the filter slope and how steep or subtle the filter attenuation will be. So one pole means an attenuation of 6 decibels per octave, and any increment to the poles means an increment of 6 decibels in the filter slope. So a 2 poles means 12 dB per octave, and a 4 pole means 24 dB per octave. Now let's go back to our natural harmonics representation here to explore a little more on the types of filter we are gonna patch today. I said in the beginning of the video that we would use different combinations of a low pass filter and a high pass filter to be able to create up to 5 different filter combinations. So let's first understand what is a low pass filter and try to build it from there. So a low pass filter, it's basically an attenuation of the higher frequencies or harmonics into the sound that you are generating. And in my case here with a Moog Grandmother, my filter module, it's a low pass filter of 24 dB per octave. And by changing the cutoff frequency in the filter knob, what I'm doing is choosing how much of my high frequencies am I cutting off in my final sound after filter. Fair enough. In opposition, a high pass filter is removing my lower frequencies, and in the case of the Moog Grandmother, the high pass filter is a 1 pole filter with a much less steep slope than my low pass filter. So as a consequence, when I change the cutoff frequency of my high pass filter, I am removing more my low bass frequencies. Now if I combine those two filter modules in series, meaning that I first apply a low pass filter and then apply a high pass filter to the same sound source, what I am creating is a third filtering technique called band pass filter. And again, in my case here on the Moog Grandmother, since my low pass filter is a 4 pole against my high pass filter that has only 1 pole, I end up having an asymmetric band pass filter. And the characteristic of this filtering technique is that I'm removing the edges both in high and low frequencies, keeping only what is inside of my combined filters. Notice that in this case I have 2 cutoff frequencies parameters, which can widen or narrow the band of frequencies that I'm keeping. And if I move the two cutoff frequencies together, I'm changing my area of focus here. But in order for this filter technique to work properly, the high pass filter cutoff frequency should not be higher than the cutoff frequency of a low pass filter, because then all frequencies get cancelled and basically you start to get just a very low sound in a specific frequency. But look now what happens when I connect the low pass filter and the high pass filter in parallel. Now the frequencies that were previously cancelled by the low and high pass filters are passing through, but look what happens when I change the high pass filter cutoff frequency to be higher than the low pass filter cutoff frequency. Now what we are filtering, it's actually the amplitude of a frequency that is in the intersection between the two filters. And this technique is called band cut filter. And to get the band cut filter effect now, I would have to move both low pass and high pass filter cutoff frequencies together. Now, last but not least, if I change the spacing between the two cutoff frequencies from the band cut filter, what I get is a fifth filter type called the notch filter. Now I ask for you guys in the comments to help me out here. Is then the notch filter simply a more extreme band cut filter? Anyways, the notch filter characteristic is this narrow and pointy notch that will affect specific frequencies or remove them completely from your resulting sound. And in my case here, since I have an asymmetric relation between low pass and high pass filters, my notch ends up quite wide because of this high pass filter one pole here. And as in the band cut filter, if I now move the two cutoff frequencies together, I can get this notch filter effect. Okay, so now that we know why we are doing things, I think that patching will be pretty straightforward, nothing fancy. But I must confess that I have learned all this from this book here. Totally recommended if you have Moog modular or semi-modular gear. And I haven't tried myself to listen to how all these different filtering techniques will sound like. So you will see my genuine reactions here. In order to do this exercise, I will use only one oscillator set into a sawtooth. So we have that rich harmonic content to filter out. This might not be super pleasant to the ear because I want to use the spectrometer so that we can see the shape of the different filters while we are sweeping the filters here. But I'll try to give you also how will it sound like in a musical context. Without further ado, we can start here with our low pass filter, which is pretty straightforward. In the Moog Grandmother, the output of the mixer, it's pre-routed to the input of the low pass filter, hence semi-modular, since you can get sound out of the box without patching anything. So my low pass filter looks like this. The famous Moog ladder filter, 24 dB per octave. However, if I want to show you my high pass filter module here, which is in the utilities for the Moog Grandmother, I would have to get my mixer output directly into my high pass filter input. And when I have something connected here, that pre-connection towards the filter is undue. And now I'll take the high pass filter output from here directly into my VCA in. So now we should be listening to the high pass filter only. Here we go. But these two modules we kind of take for granted, right? We knew we had a high pass filter and a low pass filter. The fun starts when we combine the two. And in order to do so, we can simply patch the output of our low pass filter here into the input of my high pass filter. Remember that my mixer output is already connected to the low pass filter here. And now we can take the output of the high pass filter and send it in to the VCA. So what I did now, basically, my oscillator is going through the mixer, pre-routed to the low pass filter, and the output of this is going into our high pass filter that then goes to my VCA. So now I connected low pass and high pass filter in series so that we can create our band pass filter here. But if you remember from our first part of the video, what we have to do now is to guarantee that our low pass filter cutoff frequency is higher than the cutoff frequency in our high pass filter. So let's give it a try. I will put my keys here on drone. Maybe this won't be very pleasant to the ears, but bear with me. So now I'm adding cutoff frequency here from the low pass to a point where I can hear some, and I'll do the same with the high pass filter. And now if I manage to move them both together, doing my best here to keep the relation between the two, we should listen to the effect of a band pass filter. I'm not gonna say that this is a musical thing, but let's use a sequence instead, a simple arpeggio, to try to grasp how this band pass filter would sound like in a more musical context. Yeah, it's really difficult for me in my system here, since I only have voltage control for the low pass filter cutoff, to really make a modulation of this band pass filter. But I really appreciate how it sounds when we are closing a lot the low pass filter there on the lower regions of the spectrum. So now let's explore combinations in parallel. So in the first exercise we did connect the low pass filter into the high pass filter in series, but now let's try to do them both at the same time in parallel. And that patching is a little bit more complicated, but you will need one of those stackable patch cables. And what I will basically do now is to send my mixer output both into my high pass filter, but at the same time the same sound source will go to the input of our high pass filter. This way I'm not filtering first in low pass and then sending to the high pass, but both receive the same sound source with all the frequencies. I will then get the output of my high pass filter into my multi-utility here to mix the signal, and I'll do the same with my low pass filter. So now we are summing the result of a low pass filter and high pass filter in parallel, and this resulted parallel filter signal is what we want to send into our VCA. Now it will be the hard part for me to do it without graphical aid, but I'll do my best. Okay, so let's play a C. And now start filtering in low pass and adding my high pass. And now let's try to move the two together. Sounds magical, doesn't it? Now if I exaggerate the crossing here, maybe what we are hearing, luckily, will be a notch filter effect. Let me try to listen to this into the arpeggiator. Massive, right? I really like this release on the C. Wow. Well, definitely a lot to explore here on sweet spots and everything. Unfortunately, I don't have my spectrometer in front of me so that I can fine tune the values and sweet spots for the crossing of the two filters. I will look and edit how it ended up. And of course, when we try to do more advanced techniques here, we will stumble upon our platform limitations. So like I mentioned before, in the Grandmother, I can only control with voltage control the cutoff for the low pass filter, making it really difficult for me to modulate the combination of the two filters. But that's something for you to have in mind if you are going purely modular, both the question of symmetries of poles between your low pass and your high pass, and also to bear in mind that you probably would want possibility to modulate the cutoff frequencies on both sides here. Moog has solved this on the Moog matriarch because you have the stereo filters sharing the same cutoff knob that can be controlled by voltage, and they added another control they're called spacing, which will dictate either the width of your band pass filter, or you could control also the intersection of a band cut and a notch filter, right? But super interesting. Now I want to explore this with music. Probably not have the time to do so before I release this video, but I get back to you on my results. I think my Grandmother never sounded this way. That's new for me. I'm excited, guys. Well, I hope that you have learned something with this video today. I hope I brought you all the correct information, but if not, please provide your good feedback, your good input as always. And thanks for watching.